Gaming is in session, but this time may Demeo take the stand. This Resolution Games title is $39.99 on the PlayStation Store. And tonight we're looking at the following: gameplay difficulty, gameplay length, and gameplay engagement. Now, on the counts of gameplay difficulty, I have this to say. I personally feel as though the game is entirely too difficult the way it stands. Now, I understand a good challenge breeds a rewarding experience, it breeds a replay value and an excitement. But for me, it took 8 games to play, and it took playing with someone who had logged over 100 games in Demeo to beat a single quest. I played by myself. I played with others online, and it certainly did not seem to matter. I will be the first to admit that, okay, maybe I'm not the best gamer here on earth. Maybe this type of game, I just don't think exactly the way they want me to, and I'm just not as good. But it shouldn't take relying on someone who has played the game for so long to play in a certain way, to play with a certain character set, to play in a different style in order to beat the game. Like, that is, to me, 100% bullcrap. You should not design a game like this that handcuffs you to only win in a handful of ways. You should have the freedom to beat it with any strategy and character selection that you choose. And there is absolutely no reason to not have difficulty levels, except if you have a complete and utter disrespect for the players. The game is too difficult and it makes it unfun to play.
All right, Adam. Time for my cross-examination for you. On the count of gameplay difficulty, I think that Demeo is just difficult enough. There's a needle to be thread here with difficulty in a game like this. There are levels that are early, you have the 6 books in the game, and the earlier ones are easy and the later ones are more difficult. But I never feel when I'm playing through Demeo like I'm getting steamrolled unjustly, and I'm always feeling a need to think strategically. As you're going through the game, there's a fog of war, so you always have the chance of getting surprised. You don't know what's behind that door. You don't know where the enemies are unless you have a line of sight on them. And the enemies always seem to have tricks up their sleeve. I played a game just the other day, and the enemy laid down a trap, like an egg, slime egg set right in front of the door, just so I couldn't walk through it without exploding that slime egg. That's some advanced AI in a game like this. Those kind of things are always surprising. And just when I was getting through the level and I thought that I had it cleared out, I opened a door and there was just a slew of baddies waiting for me behind that door. And they had tricks up their sleeves. They were teleporting new enemies. They were spawning new enemies. They were sneaking up on me. They were strategically taking out who they thought they should get rid of. So I never felt like I had full command over the game. And that's good. A game like this, where you don't have progression carrying over from game to game, needs to have that right level of difficulty so that you enjoy it the first time you play it and you enjoy it the 100th time you play it. And it's threading that needle for me. I'm never stressed out, but I'm also never so relaxed that I don't have to pay attention to what I'm doing. And I think for a game like Demeo, where it's this strategy RPG, that's the perfect level of difficulty. It's hard to do, and they made it happen. And I had a great time playing it because of it. I always walked away feeling like, yeah, I had a good shot. This was fair, and I had fun while doing it.
I don't know what to tell you. I disagree. What's your next point?
All right. Well, now we're going to go to the point of gameplay length, Adam. So for most people, gameplay length is really an evaluation of gameplay value. How much are you getting your money's worth in this game? Are you having a good time, and how long are you having a good time? Demeo, as I mentioned, contains 6 books, each with semi-randomized levels, so that no 2 games are likely to be the same. Enemy placement can be varied. The way they behave can be varied. It sounds like they have different sets of AI that can be dropped onto the enemies, and you don't know what they are until you encounter it. And the semi-randomized levels, there are boards. This game is a game where you're basically simulating tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, but with actual pieces you're moving around on a set. Those boards or those levels can be randomized in what order you encounter them in, which makes, a kind of like roguelike-ish encounter. You're not going to see the same thing twice. On top of that, there are 6 different character classes. I think there might be more. We had a bonus one for PSVR2, I believe. Um, and they can add more with DLC. They've done it in the past for the other versions of this game. I'm sure they'll be continuing to do it because the game's successful. And so they're getting ample support in that aspect. And the character classes are varied enough that it gives you reason to go back and try to play through with a barbarian, or with a bard, or with an assassin, or with a wizard, or I'm probably forget a guardian. They all have different strengths. They all have different weaknesses, and they all have different cards that they start out with or are likely to get. So when you're playing through single player, you have a lot to work through. You have a lot of stuff to encounter. When you play single player, you get to pick one of each of the 4 character classes, fill out 4 characters to play with, and go through the level. But when you play in multiplayer, you're playing with other people. You pick your class, somebody picks their class, and you go through the level together. A lot of people are playing multiplayer. It's a popular game, so you're not going to be struggling to find a game to play. So that is also extending the shelf life. And to what Adam said, you might jump into a game with a newbie. You might jump into a game with somebody who has tons of experience. And regardless of what experience level of player you jump in with, you're probably going to be right in that line just fine of enjoyable but defeatable difficulty.
My argument isn't that the game itself is too long, but the quests are too long. So to actually have a chance to beat a quest, you need to first milk the first 2 levels of the quest, and you need to milk them hard to get as much experience and money as possible. That obviously elongates the game. If you try to cut corners, you're not going to make it. You're going to get to the 3rd level and you're going to get trashed. So the winning game I played took about 3 hours, and playing by myself and the other non-winning quest that I was with and other multiplayers, we were on the same track to finish at that time as well before we had lost. So how often do you really have 3 straight hours to sit and complete a game in one sitting? I feel like that's pretty rare. And I know you can save the game if you are playing by yourself and revisit it, but playing by yourself is boring as beans. It sucks. So again, why could you not have some assortment of quests that some are shorter that take an hour or an hour and a half, and some that are long that take 3 or 4 hours? There's no reason except for another complete disrespect for the player's time. I just can't do it. I can't do it, Alex. And what also makes it even worse is not just this time commitment to play one quest, but then my next point as well, which is gameplay engagement. So the final discussion is simply, I admit that the first time you play the game, I would even maybe argue the first 5 hours, you're in a new quest and there are different environments. The characters are very detailed, both in their depth as a character, but also like physically when you look at them. The graphics are very good. They're very detailed characters, and the enemies are the same way. They provide a lot of variables, and it really leads to a great experience. However, that quickly grows old. And although I do appreciate those graphics and those details, after so long, 5 hours or so for me, they don't wow me anymore. So what's left is repetitive gameplay that takes too long to finish a quest, that is too difficult, that isn't engaging enough to play compared to Gran Turismo 7 or Resident Evil 8, Song in the Smoke. I could go on and on about many of the other launch games on the PSVR2 library. And so I was just so incredibly bored by Demeo that even when I made it far into a quest, by the end of level 2, I just wanted to die of boredom. So I just wanted the experience to end. And at times, it's more of a test of your patience than it is of a test of your skill. That isn't a mark of a good game. A good game I want to play. I don't want to stop. And as bad as I hate to say it, Demeo is not that.
I don't believe you, Adam. Objection. Objection, Your Honor. On the case of user engagement, I find it surprisingly engaging. Adam is a man with unlimited free time, and I'm a man with very minimal free time. It's odd that he is upset that a gaming session could take too long, and I find myself completely satisfied with the length of the games. In terms of engagement, multiplayer is self-explanatory. You can play a bad video game with your friends and still have a good time. playing with random people on the internet, because of the way the game works, you're not likely to be stuck with somebody who's griefing, somebody who's power leveled and going to ruin the experience for you, somebody who's dead weight that you're going to feel like you're dragging. So again, you're going to be on that finely tuned level of difficulty with something good and enjoyable to take away from most of the experiences. When you play single player, the game is like playing, interactive chess against an AI that is capable. Now, it's probably not as deep as a game like chess, but there is a lot of variety, like I mentioned, with the characters. So, you go through and you have to think for each character, how am I going to approach this? Because you're not overpowered, because you do stand a chance of almost any enemy killing you, you have to think creatively. You have to use all the tools at your disposal, whether it be proper placement, exploding necessary traps, avoiding dangers, not being too ambitious and clearing out a level. And one of my favorite things is the card randomization. You have the cards which dictate your moves. You have basic like attack, special skills that stay there. You have basic cards like, heal yourself or heal a teammate, but then you get random cards into your deck. And because you can only hold so many cards and because the move set is so limited, you're encouraged and incentivized to play and be creative with the cards that you have on hand. For example, I played as the Bard. He had this skill that allowed you to summon a hurricane that you couldn't control, and it could annihilate you, but it could annihilate the enemies. I don't like being out of control, but I needed something in that moment. I casted that card, and I was pleased with the results, and it encouraged me to think about how I could use that card in the future, whereas normally in a game like this, I would have just ignored that card and moved on with it. Other nice things, since leveling and upgrades don't carry over, you don't get over-leveled, so you end up not getting bored of the game necessarily. You always stand a chance of dying, you always stand a chance of winning. And then, in terms of just how the game is presented, you are in a basement, there is a tabletop in front of you, and you're able to zoom and pan around the board, but you can grab the board and rotate it around. You can zoom into the level so you can make this a really up-close and personal encounter, and I found myself, if things started to feel stale, I would zoom the board around, rotate the board around, zoom in, and give myself a nice like third-person action view. Or if I was feeling uncomfortable, I might zoom out and try to play the game like a really, zoomed-out game like Diablo or something like that. Get that kind of gameplay variety in there. I appreciated it. I moved things around and adjusted things a lot more than I expected to. And that level of engagement just kept the entire experience fresh as I was going through it.
Okay, the final verdict is in regard to Demeo, based on the topics of difficulty, length, and engagement, and ultimately whether Demeo is a worthy PSVR2 title. This court finds you hung. It is a hung jury. It's a hung jury. So first of all, what does this mean? What does a hung jury mean? It means that depending on your personal taste in games, you may either love this game or you may dislike it. It's a personal choice. So the graphics, the attention to gameplay detail, and the ability to just sit back and have a great time with some friends can provide a very rewarding experience. But on the other hand, the long game times, the lack of stimulation, and difficulty could be off-putting to some. The court has spoken.